I told Don because he doesn't have enough to worry about today, but just in case there was some kind of easy answer.
Audio test. Audio test.
Is it bad?
Okay, audio test number 2.
That's good.
Testing.
All right. Stay there.
Staying. Hello and welcome to MTD's live virtual public hearing for proposed service changes. My name is Dave Goldenbaum and I'm a service planner here at MTD. I'm joined by Dan Sapphire, an analyst planner at MTD. This meeting, Dan and I will be reviewing MTD's proposed changes for our new service year beginning this fall 2022. This is an annual process which coincides with the beginning of the new school year for both the University of Illinois, Unit 4 and District 116, public schools in our community, when MTD plans improvements and changes to our routes and schedules. MTD encourages public feedback during our live presentation today, and viewers can submit questions at any time. Questions will be reviewed and addressed by MTD staff at designated points during the presentation, and all feedback will be documented and posted to our website after the event. In addition to today's live event, there will be an in-person session on Wednesday, May the 18th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on the 4th floor of the Illinois Terminal, where you can speak directly with a staff member or submit a written comment card. Similar to previous recorded hearings, there will be an open comment period May 16th through May 23rd, where MTD will continue to accept questions and give feedback. Our webpage can also be visited, which is at mtd.org/public-hearing. And there you can submit your questions and input and view posted responses from MTD staff. Next, I'll provide a brief overview of what we'll be discussing during today's hearing, starting with some background on the status of MTD's workforce and service provision. During the pandemic lockdown, MTD was proud to be able to continue to provide reliable, essential transportation services in our community. As the pandemic has begun to lessen its grip on the world and life has started returning to normal, it's been anything but business as usual for MTD, similar to most public transit agencies. In the past 18 months, MTD's workforce has been reduced by approximately 15 to 20%. Workforce shortages have a variety of causes, including childcare, retirements, medical or personal absences, and household COVID cases, all balanced with our extensive training programs for new hires. We've been working diligently to fill these positions, but in spite of our focused efforts, we remain entrenched in an employee shortage, which continues to result in service cuts. Reductions to our service due to our diminished workforce began last fall and continued to this day. We fully recognize the frustrations felt by our riders due to these restrictions, but unfortunately, they're unavoidable. The good news is that we are able to plan for these conditions now, which will allow us to provide the most reliable, predictable service for our riders during this time of reduced staffing. For this fall, we're planning to maintain current levels of reduced service. We're not anticipating any additional reductions at this time. The biggest change for this fall is that we'll be restructuring schedules on many of the higher frequency routes, including the Illini, the Teal, the Silver, and the Gold. To further improve reliability and predictability for our riders who rely on these routes. Dan will be discussing this in more detail momentarily. Our other fall service changes will remain minor and only a couple of updates to community school routes and several bus stop location changes, which I'll be reviewing with you towards the end of the presentation. One final planning note. In a more normal year, MTD spends considerable effort looking into improving service on a larger scale, such as changes to existing routes or even adding service. We're looking forward to more involved fall planning sessions in the future, including discussion of implementing select components of the recently completed Nelson-Nygaard study. But for now, our fall planning focus remains on getting through this current workforce shortage and on restoring service. Now for more on the state of our service, I'm going to hand you over to Dan Sapphire.
All right, thanks, Dave. As you mentioned, we have been experiencing a driver shortage for the past year and a half about. we're very disappointed with this, that we haven't been able to provide the same level of service to the community that we had in prior years. We know how important it is for our community, especially those like myself who don't have a car, who depend on our service to get to school, to work, to important doctors and appointments. And we're very sorry that we have not been able to provide the same level of service. We are still experiencing shortages. We are short part-time and full-time drivers. We have tried hiring aggressively. However, hiring is a lengthy process as it takes about 2 months to train our drivers. We help them get CDLs and make sure they know all the bus routes and how to drive them safely so that we can just have the most safe and reliable bus drivers in possible in Champaign-Urbana. A lot of our drivers have really stepped up and are working overtime or working on their days off. Dave and I both drive a lot, and we've tried very hard to provide as much service as we can. However, the simple reality is we cannot provide the same level of service when we don't have the same number of drivers as in previous years. It's very frustrating on an individual level. This has happened to me several times where I depend on a trip, but then turns out that that bus was cut and I have to wait another 15 or half an hour, 15 minutes or half an hour for the next bus. While it's really frustrating at the individual level, I want to explain how this happens, what this panorama is like at the systemic level, looking at the route as a whole, looking at our system as a whole. And once we're on the same page, Dave will talk about kind of how we plan to restore some of our higher capacity routes. So for example, if we have one route that takes 30 minutes to get from one side to the other for a one-way trip, if we wanted to provide 10-minute frequency, so 10 minutes between each bus, we'd need 3 buses going in each direction. So 6 buses total, each with 10 minutes between each bus. Now, if we don't have enough drivers to drive these 6 buses all day, then we can't put the buses on the street. So what happens is some of our buses are removed from service, and our consistent 10-minute frequency goes down to sometimes 10 minutes and sometimes 20 minutes. And this makes it difficult for our passengers because they don't know how long they have to wait for the next bus. If they were used to certain transfers, now maybe one of those buses or trips was cut and the transfer doesn't work for them anymore. However, we can't really build back to our 10-minute service because we don't have enough drivers. So we think the best way to improve without increasing the resources is to reschedule instead of going from sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes, to establish a more consistent 15-minute schedule. And this is a possibility on some of our higher capacity routes that already operated at 10 minutes. It's not as feasible on some of our lower frequency routes that operated every 30 minutes, for example. So I'll hand it back to Dave so he can go over the specific routes where we'll be implementing this strategy.
Great, thank you, Dan. So to address the effects that Dan just demonstrated, MTD is proposing to reschedule on the higher frequency routes, including the Illini, Teal, Silver, and the Gold routes. All of these routes have high frequencies and have been affected to varying degrees by the service cuts. On the 22 and 220 Illini, both daytime and evening schedules have been affected. The same with the 13 and 130 Silver. Cuts on the 12 Teal daytime were possibly the most dramatic and noticeable by its riders, while cuts on the 10 Gold were relatively minor by comparison, but did leave room for rescheduling improvements. All of these are going to be addressed in the fall of 2022. Let's discuss the 22-220 Illini rescheduling in some more detail. Current service cuts on the 22-220 Illini resulted in a variable 10 and 20-minute frequency, much like what Dan was showing you in the graphic room. And that's during the daytime and the evening. Our proposed schedule beginning this fall would even this out to regular 15-minute frequencies during the day and to 20-minute frequencies during the evening. Both will allow riders to more reliably utilize this busy route. Current cuts on the 12 teal daytime have resulted in regular variations of between 10 and 30 minutes between Illinois Terminal and FAR, and some 30 to 50-minute frequencies at Orchard Downs. As mentioned, these are some of the more dramatic cuts to a high frequency, high ridership route on our system. This occurred due to the way the teal has been constructed over the years, interlining or sharing different segments of the route between buses made it extremely difficult to cut any one bus without affecting many different aspects of the schedule. MTD's proposed teal daytime schedule beginning this fall adds an additional bus back into the equation and then completely reschedules the existing buses to provide a much more reliable 10 to 20-minute service between Illinois Terminal and FAR, and restoring service to Orchard Downs to 20 to 30 minutes. Cuts on the 13 and 130 silver have resulted in variable frequencies of 10 to 30 minutes during the day and 40 minutes during the evening service. Proposed rescheduling for this fall focuses our resources on the highest ridership daytime service in the silver and will provide a regular 15-minute frequency and continued regular service to Vet Med. The 130 silver evening service at this point will remain unchanged from its present service reductions. So the final component here, our high frequency route that we're looking at updating, is the gold. Current service cuts on the 10 gold have been reasonably minor, like I mentioned, but there have been a couple of times during the day where 30-minute service is reduced to 60 minutes in the community, and more regular reductions from 10-minute service to 20 on campus. This fall, MTD is proposing a partial restoration of the gold service, which will eliminate that 60-minute service gap in the community, as well as many of the 20-minute gaps on campus. If this format works well, we're considering making this new reduced service permanent for non-U of I days when demand on the campus for the gold hopper is significantly reduced. Now, back over to Dan for some information regarding fall scheduling on other system routes. Dan?
Thanks, Dave. Kind of as I mentioned a few minutes ago, this strategy for rescheduling works really well on some of our higher capacity routes. However, it doesn't work as well on some of our routes with lower frequencies. So these routes on the screen are currently operating with reduced service and will continue to have that reduced service. Some of these routes are very high ridership, such as the yellow, red, green, and safe rides. We really tried to target specific trips and vehicles that did not have high ridership. However, there was still plenty of ridership, and it has still affected a lot of passengers. For other routes, such as the navy and pink and lime, we have reduced frequencies from every 30 minutes to an hour. And ridership is low, but we've gone really far to not cut any geographic coverage, with the exception of West Connect. We've made frequencies worse at an hour instead of half an hour, but we've tried really hard to not take buses away from their routes and away from their houses. So we're planning that these routes will continue to operate on a reduced service until we have enough staff and operators to start restoring them. This next slide shows the routes that have not had any service cuts. So the Lavender, Blue, Green Express, Orange, all of these routes have not been operating with reduced service due to our staff shortage, nor do we plan they will have any service cuts pending any large staff changes this year. We are always monitoring how many drivers we have and our ridership on routes. And the way we plan to restore routes is by looking at ridership and loads. So those vehicles that have high standing loads where lots of passengers are standing, that would be a factor to bring back service to those routes when we have enough drivers. Another factor we're considering is the routes with the greatest waiting time. So I mentioned the pink or the navy, which are currently at an hour frequency instead of 30-minute frequency, because they usually operate with one vehicle and now they usually operate with two vehicles and now they're operating with one. So bringing back one vehicle to that route, to those routes, and going to a 30-minute frequency would have great benefits for that ridership. And then the third thing we're considering is community feedback. We receive calls, complaints, suggestions, and comments online and through our customer service phones, and we record them throughout the year. We've stored several comments and complaints about specific cuts, and I don't want anyone to think they're going into a void. We monitor them and track them, and they are very important in our decision-making process for restoring routes. Now I'll give it back to Dave. He'll go into some fall changes that do not have to do with our staffing.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dan. So the final part of this presentation today highlights a few more routine fall service changes, and we wanted you to make our riders aware of them and to solicit some feedback. So first, MTD plans to change the schedule on the 8 West Bronze during a layover at Lincoln Square. And presently, the Bronze arrives at Lincoln Square at 3:35 and departs at 3:40 p.m. Monday through Friday. And we are planning to eliminate this 5-minute layover, begin the 8 West Bronze at 3:35 p.m. This will allow us to serve Urbana Middle School on time after a recent dismissal time change by District 116 last year. So currently, both the 16B Pink Alternative and the 5 West Green Express serve the Cobble Field and Inverness area in Turnberry Ridge. These are the afternoon routes from Unit 4 schools. Ridership does not support the need for multiple routes here, and MTD is proposing to end the 16B Pink alternate routes after serving the Boulder Ridge area to help with schedule adherence. These changes will be communicated with District 4 and updated on our website well in advance of the beginning of the return to classes this fall, and should result in minimal student ridership changes. Finally, MTD is proposing minor changes to several community bus stops, primarily to improve safety involving automobile traffic, buses, and pedestrians. Our safety and training department has helped us analyze the following changes and concluded that the risk for accidents would be improved in each case. The stop at Market View and Convenience Place on the slide that you are currently viewing in Champaign at the McDonald's restaurant is presently located at the southwest corner and served by both the red and yellow routes. Eastbound traffic regularly turn in front of the stop buses, and it presents a danger for both operators of the buses and for pedestrians crossing Convenience Place. So our proposed new site on the southeast far side, point P, that would eliminate this danger and improve traffic flow at the intersection. Next, we're going to Lincoln Avenue between Church and Park Street. So the stops on either side of Lincoln Avenue in Urbana between Church and Park are served by the Illini and Orange. Presently, there are multiple stops. They're both within 300 feet on both sides of the street, which is well under our minimal spacing guidelines. The near side stop at the southeast side of Lincoln and Park is particularly concerning to MTD based on traffic flow on Lincoln and its close proximity following turns off of University Avenue, as well as northbound traffic turning onto Park Street in front of our stop buses. But consolidating the stops to the south side of Church Street on Lincoln would reduce the risk of auto-related accidents, as well as improve schedule adherence for both the Illini and Orange routes. The new stop locations are also in better proximity to a crosswalk at Lincoln, which is a controlled, at Lincoln and Church, which is considered a controlled intersection. And now on to Dan for a final review and end of the presentation. Dan?
All right, thanks, Dave. As we've gone over, these are broad strokes of our plan for the upcoming service year. However, there may be day-to-day changes due to reroutes. And I wanted to go over some of the online tools we have so you can stay abreast of any changes. So first, a lot of calls we get are about when is the bus showing up? And I just wanted everyone to know that you can go to mtd.org on your phone or computer. This is what our homepage looks like. And you can type in the intersection or any destination nearby the stop you're trying to get to or where you are. And it will take you to our trip planner to help you plan out your trip. And this uses our most up-to-date schedule information. If you don't know where you are, you can also activate your location services on your phone or computer and click nearby and select your stop, and it will show you live departure times. So the next bus will be here in 5 minutes, etc. I also want to go over reroutes because in the summer, a lot of construction happens around the city and reroutes happen all over. So you can get notified to your cell phone or email by creating an account with mtd.org. We won't send you any spam. It will only be relevant to the trips or routes you select to receive notices from. So if you only ride the Illini or only ride the orange and green, you can select those routes and only receive notifications that affect those 2 routes. All right, and just to reiterate what Dave said in the beginning, we will be in person on the 4th floor of Illinois Terminal this Wednesday from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We'll go over this information again and be able to answer any questions you have and talk about the future or how decisions have been made over the past few years. Our open comment period is open on our website. If you go to mtd.org/public hearing, you can submit any comments. You can also call us and tell us your feedback that in relation to the service year. Thank you all for coming to our presentation. If there's any questions, feel free to submit them to our Q&A panel now or during the free comment period. Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot. We appreciate you visiting with us and we look forward to hearing your feedback.
Thank you, Dan and Dave, that was a great presentation. If anyone has any questions, we will be available here for the next few minutes to answer them, or you can go online and submit those in writing or give us a call. Thanks for joining us today.